Welcome everyone to the last lecture for this semester. I know you're probably real excited about this. Tonight we're going to be talking about going into the 21st century. So we're going to pick up with President H.W. Bush, who was elected in 1988, and talk about the last decade of the 20th century and into the 21st century. So let's get started. So this is H.W. Bush right here. He is originally from Maine, but he transplanted to Texas. And he will be the vice president under Ronald Reagan. And so in 1988, he will run in his own right and be elected. He was very, very strong on foreign policy, but not quite so good on domestic issues. And that's what's going to catch him up when it gets time to be reelected in 1992. In foreign relations, under his watch, the Cold War is going to end. Even though he was behind the scenes while Ronald Reagan was the president, he was very much involved in the breakdown of communism. So in 1989, they're going to open up travel again between East and West Germany. And so very soon after that, the Germans are going to knock down the Berlin Wall. And this is the wall coming down in Berlin. And then the next year, they're going to reunite the country. It's now all one country again, not just East Germany, West Germany. And then a year after that, the Soviet Union is going to fall. That's what this statue is right here. That's a statue of Lenin that was knocked over. It is dissolved and it becomes lots of different countries like Tajikistan and Uzbekistan and Georgia, Ukraine, all of those become independent countries again, and now they're called the Commonwealth of Independent States. Also during this time period, away from the Soviet Union, you've also got people in China that are rising up wanting democracy. A lot of college students have gotten word of what's going on in other places around the world, and they want a more democratic country. And so they're going to stage this huge protest in Tiananmen Square in Beijing. Now, the communist government in China is going to very violently squash this one. This gentleman right here who's standing in front of these tanks, he does not get run over by the tanks. But there are going to be students and protesters that are going to be injured and killed in this big protest. Also during Bush's time in office is when American forces are going to invade Panama and go after Manuel Noriega, who was the president of Panama. Noriega had declared a war against the United States, more of a drug war than anything else. And so he is going to be captured and brought back to the United States and arrested and tried. He'll spend the rest of his life in an American prison. I think he died in 2015 in American prison. And then you also have the Persian Gulf War. Now, this is probably one of the Gulf Wars that you're most familiar with because you may have had parents or grandparents that have fought in this war. This is also known as Operation Desert Storm. What happens is the government of Iraq is going to invade the little country of Kuwait because Iraq wanted more coastline on the Persian Gulf. They had a very small amount, and Kuwait, even though it was a tiny country, had more. And so Saddam Hussein and his forces are going to invade Kuwait. Saudi Arabia would like protection from America, and so we're going to agree to that and send troops. And that's when it's known as Operation Desert Shield. When Saddam Hussein doesn't back off, then we are going to invade Iraq and Kuwait and move the Republican forces back all the way to Baghdad. And so that's some of the foreign policy that happens during H.W. Bush's time in office. But when the 1992 election comes up, the economy is not exactly where everybody would like for it to be. And Bill Clinton, who he is running against, is going to play upon that. His big attack against Bush was, "It's the economy, stupid." And so it's going to be a really big campaign issue. Even with that, though, Bush is going to lead Clinton in the polls all the way up through August. But about the end of August, a Dallas billionaire, H. Ross Perot, yes, the Perot Museum is named after him, is going to throw his hat in the ring. And he is more conservative than Bush is. And so people that would have voted for Bush are going to pull off and vote for Perot, which is going to split the Republican ticket. and give the majority of the votes to Clinton, and that's how Clinton gets elected in 1992. And so the next president then is going to be Bill Clinton, and this is Bill Clinton right here. He was a former Arkansas governor, and he has got a lot of baggage that is coming with him, and already his opponents are already looking for chinks in his armor to be able to go after him and bring him down. He is going to face a lot of budget issues. In 1995, we're going to have the longest government shutdown up to that time. They're going to pass welfare reform during his administration, but they're not going to be able to get health care reform put through Congress. That's because Congress is more Republican controlled than Democrat controlled, and Clinton was a Democrat. He's also, going to get the North American Free Trade Agreement signed. That is between America and Canada and Mexico. And so you have to be careful not to mix up NAFTA with NATO. So NAFTA is a trade agreement, and NATO is a military alliance over in Europe. But the NAFTA is also going to cause manufacturing to move away from the U.S. This is when you're going to start getting a lot of the outsourcing that happens, where companies are going to find cheaper labor in other countries to create their products. Also, during Clinton's administration, and foreign-wise, you're going to have the breakup of Yugoslavia. So this is Yugoslavia at the beginning of Clinton's administration. This is what happens to it almost 15 years later, where it's going to break up into Bosnia-Herzegovina and Serbia and Croatia. The only time really this area of the world had been basically at peace is when Marshal Tito was the ruler of Yugoslavia, because he had enough oomph to be able to get the warring sides in that area to leave each other alone. But it was a constant battle back and forth from about 1400 on between the Muslims and the Christians, and both sides equally had fault in the problems going on during the when it was in this area. And so after Marshal Tito dies, they go back to fighting with each other, and then it's finally going to split into several different countries. Now, it's in Clinton's second term that all heck breaks loose. Like I said, you got his opponents that have been looking for chinks in his armor. And so one of them that he carried with him from Arkansas was the Whitewater real estate scandal. And so he's got, people are already investigating. There's already a special prosecutor looking into that. And so you would think that a man who already lived in a glass house and already had people throwing pebbles at his glass would mind his P's and Q's. But he has a sexual affair with Monica Lewinsky in the Oval Office of the White House. And as girls will do when, they hook up with somebody famous, they had to tell somebody. And she told a friend who told two friends, and they told two friends, and they told two friends, and so on. And so it gets back to the special prosecutor. Well, they're going to bring him in because that's a breach of national security. You have got the person which under the presidency who has the highest clearance in the country of security clearance, and he's having a sexual affair with someone who has zero security clearance. And so they bring him in, and if he had stood up there and said, yep, I did it, I'm sorry, probably shouldn't have, but yes, I did it, then he would have been okay. But he said, no, I did not have sexual relations with that woman. And that is lying under oath, and that gave them the ammunition they need to go after him. And so Congress is going to move to impeach him, and it's going to miss by one vote, having him removed from office. And so that's going to be the huge scandal that is going to hit his second term. During Clinton's administration, the stock market is going to have its highs and its lows. That's what a boom and a bust are called. You're going to have the Enron stock fraud and some other things that are going to go down. And so there's going to be a lot of up and down with the economy. The poor and the middle class are not, they're going to become worse off, while the rich are going to be better off. And so that's going to be a problem. Immigration during this time is mostly coming from Latin America. This is when the Hispanics become the majority minority. Of all the majority groups, the largest group is going to be Hispanics. And that's when we get really into celebrating multiculturalism. I always have. I've always loved the different cultures that I've been exposed to. from the music to the architecture, but especially the food. I'm a big foodie, and so food from different parts of the country or different parts of the world has always been very interesting to me. And so multiculturalism and the celebration of diversity is really a big thing that I really like. Now, you also have got the contract with America. This guy right here, that's Newt Gingrich. He is going to lead this conservative movement in Congress to go back to a more Jeffersonian democracy type of government where you have less federal government, more control of the states. You're going to cut taxes, balance the budget, and get rid of some regulations that are restricting the expansion and contraction of business. So in 2000, Clinton has already served his 2 terms, so he's going to be leaving office, and you're going to have the election coming up with 2 new guys, and you're going to have, sorry, I went to the wrong slide, you're going to have Al Gore, who's running for the Democrats, and George W. Bush, the son of H.W. Bush, running for the Republicans. And it's going to be a very, very close race. It's going to come down to Florida's Electoral College votes. And there is a big debate over the validity of the votes because they're using a punch card system. That's what this is right here. And so they take a little poker thing and they poke a hole in it, and they're saying that these little hanging pieces of paper that did not come all the way off cause the vote count to be wrong. And so they count it, and they count, and they count, and they recount, and they recount. And they may still be counting votes in Florida. And so it finally goes to the Supreme Court, who will validate the Florida vote count, and it's going to give the Electoral College votes to George W. Bush. And so that is how he is going to win this very, very close contested election in 2000. So he becomes the next president, and he's going to focus on the economy because, remember, his dad got sucked in because he didn't focus on the economy. And then in September of that year, the terrorists are going to attack the World Trade Center and the Pentagon, and of course the plane crash in Pennsylvania, and that is going to totally shift how he does the rest of his time in office, both the 2000 administration and the 2004 administration. So he is going to do some things on that day that a lot of people are going to throw criticism at, but in my understanding, I think they were really smart things. When he is told about the attacks on the World Trade Center, he is in the middle of reading a story to a bunch of 5-year-olds at a kindergarten school. And so he takes the information and then he continues to read the book. He doesn't hop up and run off. And that did 2 good things. Number 1, it didn't panic the children. But number 2, it gave him a chance to process what he'd been told so he can respond instead of react. And if you've had any kind of emergency training, you know that responding instead of reacting is a lot more important. And so he is going to finish the story and then go off with his men. Now, 2 other things that are going to happen that day, they're very, very important. He is going to ground every single plane in the United States. I mean, not even a crop duster private plane can take off. That was a very good thing. I have friends in the airline industry who told me that there were plans in California for terrorist groups to do the same thing out there that they had been done in New York. And when he grounds the planes, that can't happen. He also convinces the stock market to stay closed until the following Monday. If the stock market had opened on Wednesday after the terrorist attacks on Tuesday, we'd have had a stock market crash worse than what we had in 1929. And so those were 2 things that he doesn't really get a lot of credit for that he did on the day of the attacks. Now, the next month, he is going to launch Operation Enduring Freedom, which is the bombing campaign in Afghanistan because the Taliban were the ones supposedly hiding Osama bin Laden. And so this is Afghanistan over here. It's kind of a crossroads between different Middle Eastern countries. It's a much coveted area, much fought over. And then 2003, because of intelligence that says that Al-Qaeda, which was Osama bin Laden's terrorist group, had training facilities and weapons of mass destruction in Iraq, then the war is going to spread to Iraq, going after Al-Qaeda. Also, in 2005, you're going to have the destruction of Hurricane Katrina that's going to wipe out New Orleans. That's going to be a big thing, especially with the fiasco of FEMA, who was accused of not being very on the ball with relief funds and stuff like that. In the midterm elections in 2006, in 2006, you're going to have the Democrats gain control of both houses of Congress. And this is when Nancy Pelosi is going to become the first woman Speaker of the House. And as we get into 2008 and that election coming up in 2008, then you're going to have all of this economic stuff going on. You have the housing bubble that is getting bigger and bigger and bigger and fixing to burst. You've also got the price of oil going from about $50 a barrel, skyrocketing up to almost $150 a barrel. So it had been inflated way past its true value. So once again, like in the Great Depression, we've got a Jenga tower that we pull too many blocks out from in the bottom of it, and it's doing this wobbly thing. Okay, and that's what's going to happen as we go into the 2008 election. So in 2008, Barack Obama becomes the next president. Now he's very special because he is the first African American president. But the economy is doing that wobbly thing. And so Congress is going to pass the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act, and that's going to take deficit spending to a whole new level where they're going to pump government funds into propping up different parts of the economy so that people's jobs don't get wiped out. Congress is also going to pass the Affordable Health Care Act, which is also known as Obamacare, where you have to, by law, buy health insurance. Now, I think they have taken out the tax penalty now if you don't have health insurance, but it was a way of getting everybody insured. What happened, though, was that a lot of Americans wound up it not being very affordable at all if they had to go through this process to get insurance. It was costing, maybe 4 times the premium of someone who got their insurance through their employer. And so it's got its issues as far as trying to insure everybody. Foreign policy-wise, during the Obama administration, in May of 2011, a SEAL team is going to find and assassinate Osama bin Laden, and that's going to get that one evil person out of everybody's hair. But you're also going to have other acts of terrorism that are going to go on within the United States. It's called domestic terrorism. And so you've got the Boston Marathon bombing. That was done with basically Instapots, pressure cookers that they had set to explode. You've also got the San Bernardino, California terrorist attack, the Orlando nightclub attack, and then the Sandy Hook massacre where all these children were killed by a lone gunman. And so those are some of the different events that go on during the Obama administration. He serves 2 administrations. He's elected again in 2012. And so when he leaves office in 2016, you have got the next election, and that is when Donald Trump is going to be elected the next president. At that point, I am going to just leave it at that. We are too close to that administration to really go into any kind of depth with it. You need to be about 50 years away from an event to be able to adequately analyze the good, the bad, and the ugly. And so at this point, we're still too close to the Trump administration to be able to say yes or no if it was a valuable administration or not. And so that ends the lecture part for our semester. And I know that your final exam is going to be coming up soon. And so I'm hoping all these notes will help you do well on the exam. From this point on, you guys have a great day. Thanks. Bye.